Now we begin in court as lawyers for Asin Central Member of Parliament Kennedy Japan say he's suffering from complications from post-COVID-19 conditions he suffered last month. This was the justification for the legislator's absence in court Monday morning. Mr. Japan's lawyers were to explain to the court why he should not be severely punished for some comments he made against a judge. But the case had to be adjourned since Mr. Japan was absent. Court correspondent Joseph Akable joins us with more.
There is a trial going on. Parties are having a healthy exchange. There is a healthy exchange between the bar and the bench. We have had a healthy engagement, and we would want to maintain that. At the end of the day, it is one country we have, and the rule of law is all we need to guide everything. So, with all due respect, we'll come back on the day the court has agreed that we come. But everything is fine, and there should be no trouble or unnecessary speculation. The court must be respected. The Honorable Member of Parliament must also be respected. There should be no misreportage. Partisan politics cannot be the solution in a legal matter, or that an attempt to create a partisan situation around a matter that a court is dealing with will not help. That is why all of us are conducting ourselves in a manner that would ensure that the right things are done. I thank you very much. God bless all of you.
Thank you. Expect more on this story in subsequent bulletins. Now, the minority in Parliament says the Audit Service has breached the law establishing the Auditor General's office by not submitting its 2019 reports to Parliament 6 years after the year ended. They blame the situation on President Akufo-Addo's decision to direct the AG to go on leave. Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu alleges the directive and subsequent inability to submit the report is part of the NPP government's attempt to cover up corruption in the administration.
The Auditor General has labored to ensure that all reports are submitted to Parliament within the statutory time limits as I have indicated. It is therefore sad, indeed sad, and we have cause to blame executive interference and executive intrusion that the said report for 2019 is not before Parliament. The audited account for the 2019 financial year, which provides an expose on irregularities, financial malfeasance, misappropriation, embezzlement, and even extortions, have not been submitted to Parliament. We have every reason to believe that this government is covering up to avoid a potential embarrassment of what will be revealed in the audited account for 2019. It ought to be noted that the Auditor General is enjoined to draw the attention of Parliament to instances where public monies are not properly accounted for, or where there is deficiency through fraud, default, or mistake by any person, and that resources are used with due regard to the good of our economy and the public good of Ghana. It is a view of the minority that the abroad and ill-advised decision of the President in directing the Auditor General to proceed on his accumulated leave was not just intended to gag the Auditor General in drawing attention to many of these anomalies perpetrated by officials in government and public officials. The minority caucus is particularly concerned that these delays may be deliberate for the primary purpose of avoiding further embarrassment to government.
Now, we know that the Auditor General, Daniel Domelevo, was asked to proceed on leave by President Akufo-Addo on accumulated leave, actually, because all the leave days that were accrued to him in his time from the year 2017, 1st January, he was asked to proceed on leave, and he will return sometime in January. He has been criticized this decision by the President has been criticized as a ploy to get Mr. Domelevo out of office, especially since he's currently investigating Mr. Yao Osafo-Maafo, the senior minister, who allegedly hired a group called Cole & Associates to the tune of $1 million to look into some matters pertaining to the former government. Now, the minority is unhappy with government's decision, and Mr. Idrisu is insisting that it is because Mr. Domelevo is not around that this report has not been submitted to the House. Let's speak to Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, who is a parliamentary correspondent. He'll give us a bit more on the matter. Joseph, what more did the minority leader say?
So, Daniel, the minority leader, Harry Idrisu, is quoting Article 1875 of the Constitution, which is categorical that the Auditor General shall, within 6 months after the end of the immediately preceding financial year, to which of the account mentioned in Clause 2 of the article relates, submit its report to Parliament, and shall in that report draw attention to any irregularities in the accounts audited and to any other matter which, in the opinion of the Auditor General, ought to be brought to the notice of Parliament. Now, they quote this portion of the Constitution and say that despite this provision, which is again captured in the Section 20 of the Audit Service Act 2000, they say it's been more than 6 months. And in fact, as far as this year is concerned, we've done almost 9 months into the year. But for the 2019 year, the Auditor General hasn't submitted the said report to Parliament yet. And for them, this is a breach of the Constitution and the law establishing the audit service. And this is something that shouldn't be countenanced. They go on to say this is happening because of the President's directive to the Auditor General, Daniel Domelevo, recently to go on leave. And they think that all of that is of the ploy to avoid this report coming to the House. And they would want the President to go ahead and further direct the Auditor General or whoever is serving in his stead to submit this report to Parliament so that those claims of malfeasance could become issues of public attention.
Of context on this Auditor General Daniel Domelevo was known to submit his report ahead of schedule, was he not?
That has actually been the case on a lot of the occasions. That sometimes very much early in the year he submits his report. He's gone ahead to do various special audits in years before and submitted some of those special audits to Parliament. So to a very large extent, the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament, which vets a lot of these reports eventually, has repeatedly commended the Auditor General for his moves as far as the work that he's been doing over the years is concerned, which is why the minority is worried that that situation hasn't happened this time around, and they think there is something wrong that needs to be rectified as soon as possible.
But is it that the only difference between when Daniel Domelevo as Auditor General was submitting all these reports ahead of schedule and now is that he's not around? Has the Auditor General, has the Audit Service, for instance, communicated any special difficulty to the House?
No, we asked that specific question of the minority as to whether they have made any attempt to reach out to the Office of the Auditor General to get clarity on what the problem may have been, which is resulting in this situation. The minority leader, Harry Idrisu, makes the point that any such move will amount to an interference in the work of the Auditor General, which they, as the minority, wouldn't want to do. That is why they are taking advantage of the media, which is the fourth estate of the realm, to raise these concerns and hope that it be rectified. But from the indication the minority is giving, no such communication has actually come to the House as far as the difficulty in getting this report put together and submitting it to the House is concerned, which is why they think that the presidency, which the minority says had the audacity, to direct the Auditor General to post on leave, should actually intervene and ensure that this right thing is done as is captured in the Constitution.
Has the majority responded, particularly the majority members of the Public Accounts Committee? Right, we are having a bit of difficulty with establishing the connection with Joseph Opoku-Gakpo. We will go back to him when we have a stronger connection. You're still live on Joy News. Today, we've already taken you to court where Kennedy Japan's lawyers say he's suffering from post-COVID-19 effects, and so he cannot appear in court now. Let's move on to other stories. And a joint security personnel is on a manhunt for more persons suspected to be involved in last Friday's disturbances in parts of the Volta region. The Homeland Study Foundation, which is spearheading the activities of the Western Togoland separatist group, claimed responsibility for the capturing of some security officers, mounting roadblocks, burning of car tires on the two major routes leading to and from the Volta region. Many commuters were held up in about 3 hours of traffic last Friday morning. According to reports, one person suspected to be part of the separatists has been killed. A police commander is still on admission after sustaining several bullet wounds. JoyNews is learning of some brutalities being meted out to residents of North Tong constituency, precisely Mepe, Bator and Aveyime, by some soldiers. Correspondent Ivy Setoji is in the enclave and joins us live with more. Ivy, so what do we know this morning?
Good afternoon, Daniel. So what we had yesterday or last night was that some security persons were in the Bator and Aveyime, and as well as Mepe, going to homes of some residents, asking them where their relatives were, especially their husbands and boyfriends. According to residents, now these mid-residents, according to them, live in fear for what happened. And we were also told that they arrested some Okada riders, motorbikers, and also some boat owners. Then today, we were told that they released these people. We got to the police station and we couldn't find these Okada riders, but we were told they just left before we got there. Now, we went to the district assembly with the MP, Samuel Okujeto, yesterday. We realized that the place was closed down. This morning, too, we got there with the DC for the district, Colin Taku, who spoke to the media. He said, for now, they are not coming to work for security reasons. They are waiting for authorities to let them know when to start working because it's a security issue. So the place is closed down, but we don't know who actually ordered the place to be closed down for the meantime.
Now, Ivy, we understand some of the joint security personnel who are currently carrying out investigations in the township have been a bit heavy-handed with the citizenry. Have you heard of any of these reports?
Yes, according to residents, some of these security officers, we were told formed police units. That is what we were told they are called. Went to residents' homes to ask them some questions, making them feel uncomfortable according to the residents. So that was what we were told yesterday and this morning. And that was
do we know what exactly these officials did? Do we know if they beat people or they shouted at people? How did they make them feel uncomfortable? Did they say?
Some residents alleged that some of these security men ordered some people to roll on the ground. We don't know if it is true, but this is an allegation. And then asked the motor riders some questions and arrested some of them, and as well as the boat owners. So these are some of the things the residents are alleging that these security persons were doing in these areas in the North Tongue district.
Thank you very much, Ivy Setoji. Now, Member of Parliament for the area, Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa, told JoyNews he expects professionalism on the part of the officers conducting the search for culprits so as to protect innocent lives. He also expressed concern that there may be some elements involved in the insurgency who are not Ghanaian.
It makes for worrying observation, and that is the reason that some of us insist that there should be a high-scale investigation into this matter, because I've watched some of the videos and the war songs they are chanting and all of that. It's clear that it's not war songs, it's not the kind of Ewe, it's not the Tong Ewe, it's not Anglo Ewe, it's not the Ewe associated to Ghanaians. It sounds more like the Guinea Ewe of the Togo people. And one wonders, who are those out there? The borders are closed. How do they get in? Who's facilitating this? I mean, this is it's looking like a leaf out of a Hollywood movie. And Colonel Professor Tabaji is right that historically you've had people from Togo and other parts of Africa, take part in this whole matter. And we are getting increasingly worried because if they now have access to weapons, and remember that they've also, in this operation, been able to annex more weapons. They now have a whole cache of arms that they can use to perpetuate other violence. We don't know where they are going next. We must see the state, rise up to the occasion. The national security apparatus must be up and doing. Intelligence cannot continue to fail.
My name is Mr. Dachumo Walanyo. My view with what is going on in the country between the Western Togoland, that group, and the government is, I think the government have to come into a negotiation table with this particular group, know their grievances. If they are able to solve it, fine. But if they are not able to solve it, I think the problem is still there. So let the government come into a negotiation table with the people. Let the people also come out with their problems or with their grievances. If the government is ready to solve the problem, fine. Let's say, for example, you have been feeding your children with 1 cedis, and along the line they are demanding for 2 cedis, meaning there's a vacancy that they have to occupy with that additional 1 cedi. So if you're able to give your daughter that 1 cedi, I don't think there will be a problem. So the government have to know their grievances. In fact,
I think the government should engage the agitating group. It is the only way to know what their issues are, to enable them fashion out a solution. It is not for nothing that a group of people will just get up and be making demands such as this. We've heard many stories about the so-called independence of the Volta region for a very long time. So government needs to meet with the group. It is also not good for the group to take the law into their hands. As for that one, I do not agree with them. They didn't do well.
You're live on Joy News today. Let's take you now to Menchia Palace in the Ashanti region capital, Kumasi, where President Akufo-Addo is paying a courtesy call on Otumfuo Osei-Tutu II Asantehene.
Asokwa Municipal, Atwima Mponua District, Krofom District, and Atwima Kwawoma District. So 15 districts are going to get district hospitals in the course of the next 12 months, so that we have a full coverage of this. Iti nana sra me besre o moano 2016 no mama no kwa na de me mafa de bihwa bosha me share ese me ba beboa e ma santeman etumpon me mafa de mediso eno tina me sre asanteman ebiom se so no hwe na se pa se mama ye eso eni a ene 4 more for nanano the baba sre asanteman ya fanya adwuma na sa so a o nke se e ba sa na Ghana for preso nyakopon so bue kwa no a me kwa me ntimi kwa ba no me hia mema be ene ma be boa me wo mrahye bedwam na woni tumi afoa nyema me ye no so eye mrahye a be boa ma no nkoso ehihye a ehia se ebeye ema Ghana tumi etumpo na And now we 44 constituencies were Ashanti, 47, and we are MPP 4. Now, the best Safi there. Everybody in 47 in your prepo. Yeah, 47 in your prepo. Now, and I want to can say, oh, Tidro. The Bible said, now 47 parliamentary candidates of NPP Nina and Ewas at the menu. May you watch your Baku. Sano, no one Nipakura Eba. The Bible says here, Ewa Adansia Sokwa, so Iraqati Hammer. I didn't know you were still alive. Adansia Sokwa, Iraqati Hammond, Onujan Wanemi. Ifija Kwabre North, Collins, Adomako Mensa. Ifija Kwabre South, William Oreku Edu.
And we are currently bringing you live footage from Minshia Palace in the Ashanti region capital of Kumasi. What you're seeing President Akufo-Addo do now is outdoor the 47 parliamentary candidates, most of whom, of course, are sitting members of parliament, who would be representing the NPP in the 2020 general election in December. Just before he began outdooring them individually, he mentioned that it is his hope that the NPP currently holds 44 out of the 47 seats in the Ashanti region. It's his hope that in the December 2020 elections, all the seats in the Ashanti region will be held by the NPP in January. Now, earlier, he made a key statement about the Agenda 111. Remember, President Akufo-Addo mentioned that the NPP would be putting up 88 different hospitals in the districts that do not have hospitals, 6 in the newly created regions. And then, so that was Agenda 94. When the manifesto was being launched, this was extended to 111 hospitals. That became Agenda 111. The reason why this is important to remember is that in the announcement of Agenda 88, President Akufo-Addo said that they will be completed within the space of a year. Then Information Minister Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah let us know that this is a year after it begins, and as Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta needs to put out the financing plan for these hospitals, after which construction will begin, and then the hospitals will be completed within a year. President Akufo-Addo just said in Kumasi that within the next 12 months, these hospitals should be completed. So we just had a specific and definite timeline being placed on Agenda 111. Beginning from today, in the next 12 months, we should see 111 hospitals. That is if the NPP is retained in power. So you currently find a number of these parliamentary candidates being introduced. We'll go back to Kumasi, specifically Minshia, when the program progresses. Currently being introduced is the Sports Minister, Isaac Isiama of Echimampunia. Now, Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia has called on the Fulani community to resort to educating their wards by subscribing to government's flagship free SHS policy, addressing the the Conference of National Council of Fulani Chiefs at a national conference held in Kintampo. Mr. Bawumia, or Dr. Bawumia, said, unlike the NDC, which has promised to build mortuaries in the Zongo communities, the next NPP government will furnish those Muslim-dominated communities with model schools. Anas Sabit was at the conference and came through with the following report.
At the Council's first ever national conference held in Kintampo in the Bono East region, Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia charged the Fulani community to focus on educating their wards by subscribing to government's free senior high school policy.
So many of our children have the brains. And Nana Akufo-Addo said, if by the grace of God he becomes president, he wants us to make education free for all Ghanaians. So today, if you are in the Zongo, if you are a Fulani family or a Wangara family, please, you have no excuse now for your children not going to school. No excuse. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that we should look for education. And even if we have to go to China, but now you don't have to go to China. Nana Akufo-Addo has brought you the education for free in Ghana. It's free.
Dr. Bawumia highlighted efforts taken by the current administration to educate students from deprived communities by establishing senior high schools in 16 Zongo communities across the 16 regions of the country.
One of the things that we also want to do, inshallah, in the area of education, we are going to start something new next year. Every region, we are going to build a model senior high school in the Zongo community. Every region. So we will start with 16 model senior high schools in Zongo communities in every region so that our children can have an opportunity to attend those schools.
He called on the Fulani community to reject John Mahama's one Zongo, one mortuary promise.
Our policy is not one Zongo, one mortuary. We are not thinking of mortuary. We are thinking of schools, model schools. This year we sent 40 students from Zongo communities to Cuba to study medicine. 40 students selected from around the country to Cuba to study medicine. Because we need more doctors, we need more pathologists, and all of that, and not more children.
On his part, National President of the Council of Fulani Chiefs, Alhaji Idris Mohammed Bengal, called on the Fulani community to educate their wards as well as adopt other artisanal skills as a means of ending the farmer-herdsman conflict.
Time has changed. Urbanization, industrialization, and things like that. You name it. So we have to change, the system, because there's a popular saying that when the music changes, the dancing also must change.
Now, NDC's presidential candidate and former president John Dramani Mahama has returned to the Bono region to continue his tour. The former president last week truncated his 4-day tour due to what he described as anomalies in the voter register exhibition exercise. Mr. John Mahama, on day 1 of 3, will be paying courtesy calls on the chiefs at Seikwa, Brekum, and whistle stops at Biadan, Senase, and Wamfie. He will also have engagements with the Okada Association members at Brekum, cocoa farmers in the communities at Wamanafo and Doma Akwemu, all in the Brekum East and West and Doma East constituencies. Precious Semevo joins us with more. Precious, has Mr. Mahama's activity for today begun, and what has he been saying?
Yes, Daniel, if I can hear you right, Mr. John Dramani Mahama just arrived in Brekum, the Omahene's palace. But before then, before he started his campaign, the return of John Mahama to the Bono region, thousands of supporters welcomed him at Kato. He was just passing through Brekum to start the campaign tour in the Time District, Seikwa to be precise. But he had thousands of supporters welcoming him back to the Bono region. Now at Seikwa, where he attended the Deba of chiefs and people, the chiefs said that most of the projects that Mr. Dramani Mahama and his administration started has been left in the bush. And he is appealing to the former president that they are going to do everything within their means to ensure that he comes back to power. And when that happens, he should remember to rectify all those projects and upgrade them for them. Now, Mr. Mahama, in his response have said a lot of things that they have in their manifesto. They tagged as the People's Manifesto to the benefit of all of them. Now, he particularly said that his government is going to provide a befitting police station for Sekwa and its environs, as well as upgrade their health center and other educational facilities within the Sekwa municipality, and also appeal to the people that former parliamentary member of NDC in the time constituency, Mr. Jan Tutu, is no longer the one that has been selected by the party to represent them. And as such, they are not going to tolerate any skirt and blouse in this year's general election. The candidate is Suleimana Adams, and he is entreating all to vote for him instead of anyone preaching skirt and blouse within the
Thank you very much, Precious Semevo, for joining us with those updates. You're still live on Joy News today. Coming up in business, Ghana's total exports earnings declined marginally to hit $9.6 billion. We tell you how that could impact on the city's stability.
Secretary Afram, please. Joseph Owusu. Swane, Oseche Mensa Bonsu.
Thanks for staying with us. Time for business. My name is Darryl Kwao. The country's total earnings from exports declined marginally to 9.6 billion cedis ending August this year. That's when you compare to what was secured same period for last year. Is there cause for worry about the impact on the cedi and international reserves? Here's George Jaffe.
$6 billion ending August this year. Now let's break down these earnings. Well, gold as at the end of August brought in $4.3 billion, slightly higher than what we got in August last year. Well, we earned $1.7 billion from cocoa for this year. However, the decline from crude oil was quite significant as it dropped by $3 billion in 2019 to $1.5 billion this year. However, for some, the expected impact of this development on the Ghana cedi and international reserves are mixed. Now, if earnings continue to decline compared to what we realized for last year, then that will impact negatively on the country's international reserves and our ability to support the Ghana cedi and finance our imports. However, other analysts have argued that since crude oil earnings was one of the major reasons for the decline, and with economies now opening up following the ability to manage COVID-19 spread, as well as gold prices picking up strongly, we may end the year getting more than the $15.6 billion realized for last year. In terms of imports, we spent $8.3 billion in financing our needs, resulting in a trade balance of $1.3 billion, while the gross international reserves stood at $8.5 billion ending August this year, representing 4 weeks of import cover.
Now, each Ghanaian will be required to pay a little over 8,700 cedis when the country's debt of 263 billion cedis, 263 billion cedis is shared among the 30 million of the population. Now, this comes after the nation's total public debt stock inched up by about 7 billion cedis between June and July this year. Charles Nixon Yabua examines the rising debt level and its potential challenges to the economy.
The total public debt stock represents about 68.3% of gross domestic product and is gradually nearing the dreaded 70% mark. Between January and July this year, the nation's debt has increased by about 43.5 billion cedis. This comes as a concern because of the slower fiscal consolidation process and the potential cost as a result of a depreciating cedi. Figures from the Bank of Ghana indicate that the external component is estimated at 138 billion cedis approximately $24.3 billion. The challenge in servicing the external debt is repaying in US dollars at a time in which the cedi may have further depreciated against the American currency. Prior to COVID-19 pandemic, the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund had expressed worry about the nation's rising debt levels, warning it poses a threat to the fiscal economy going forward. Their argument was that the nation might struggle to repay both principal and interest costs if its increasing debt levels are not checked. This is as a result of the expected foreign exchange risks and the failure to close the fiscal gap. Few weeks ago, ratings agency Fitch had also warned that the nation's credit ratings might be downgraded because of expected slower fiscal consolidation process. A downgrade of the economy could trigger liquidation of investment by foreign portfolio investors and pressure on the local currency. There is a school of thought that it's easier to borrow or take a loan, but repayment is always a test case. The country is expected to spend about 24 billion cedis on interest payment alone this year. This is 4 billion cedis more than it spent last year. 70% of the nation's taxable revenue is used to service debt as well as pay wages and salaries.
Now, some news coming into us. The Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana has kept its key lending rate unchanged. The committee left the rate at which it lends to commercial banks at 14.5%, the second time this year. Now, speaking at a news conference a while ago, Governor Dr. Ernest Addison noted that the move was influenced by some threats to inflation and economic growth. We'll bring you more subsequently on the marketplace, which is in about 20 minutes. And that's it for business. My name is Darryl Kwao. Coming up next is sports, where we leave you with what's looking like on the commodity market this afternoon.